Troy, who is not actually from Troy, but as Queen of Sparta, is said to have been the reason for the fall of the city of Troy. She is always described as the most beautiful woman who stuns men with her beauty. Some see her as a sly woman, while others as a victim to the gods. The myths around Helen being seduced, kidnapped, or as a seducer are left ambiguous. Portraits vary from seeing her as a sly woman to a virtuous one. To give a bit of background on Helen, we must look at how she is described. From the myths to poetry, Helen is described as a woman with the most ideal beauty. She inspired not just paintings and poems, but operas as well. We will be looking at the depictions of her in some poems and how they relate to some paintings. Helen of Troy is a long one that we will not go too far into detail about. Her mother is said to have been a human woman named Leda, or a goddess named Nemesis, who gave birth to an egg after being seduced by a goose, sometimes a swan, that was Zeus, whom she saved from an eagle. From the egg emerged Helen and her siblings, making Helen at the very least a demi-divine being. When finding a husband for Helen, her suitors made an agreement that whoever her husband is, they would all support that man. It is when she, the Queen of Sparta, wife of Menelaus, is whisked away to the city of Troy, Paris, that the Trojan War began. It is around this part of the myths that her beauty is most significant. In a passage from the Iliad by Homer, some elders of Troy describe Helen's beauty as, "No marvel is it that Trojans and Achaeans suffer long and weary toils for such a woman, so wondrous, like the immortal goddesses." In 1831, Edgar Allan Poe created a poem titled To Helen, where he describes Helen as having hyacinth hair and a classical face. Hyacinths are a type of flower that grows in a bunch, with the colors ranging from yellow, orange, blue, purple, pink, red, and white. In Dante Gabriel Rossetti's rendition of Helen, she is modeled after a real-life person with golden curls and green undertones. Her hair is a solid mass with little definition, like a bunch of hyacinths. The background is of Troy burning. It is a dark background compared to her golden attire. The city burning in the background is somber, giving a heavy feeling. Helen stares almost sorrowfully out past the viewer, with one hand fidgeting with the beads of her necklace, while the other points at her pendant. The pendant has what appears like a torch with fire on it. This represents Paris, who was considered a firebrand. A firebrand is defined by Merriam-Webster as one that creates unrest or strife. With an attachment to Paris, this painting views Helen as someone who willingly left her home and husband. By Edgar Allan Poe, also titled To Helen, but created later in 1848, Poe associates Helen with the rose garden. Roses that grow in an enchanted garden, where no wind dared to stir unless on tiptoe, fell on the upturned faces of these roses that gave out in return for the love light. If we look at the painting of Helen created by Evelyn de Mâcon, we see a young woman with long, flowing locks of hair. She stares at herself in a mirror with the goddess Aphrodite on the back. Her bent knee and the way she runs a hand through her hair gives a feeling of innocence, like a child. Her jewelry is a simple crown and some delicate, thin bracelets. Even her dress and sandals are plain without any adornments. White roses rest in her hair and in the foreground. They are a symbol of purity and innocence. Like in the poem, she is surrounded by roses. White doves represent peace. This painting sees Helen as an innocent person. Bussière created an image of a seductive Helen. In this image, she has large, almost flashy jewelry, a contrast to the previous depictions we saw. The bodice of her dress has gold thread with a complicated design, almost as if she is flaunting her wealth with her garments and accessories. Her gaze is bold and unapologetic. Her hand delicately holds a flower's end close to her face, bringing your attention to her lips. This painting sees Helen as an independent woman in control of her charms. She knows her beauty and how to use it. Information about Gaston Bussière. But he did create a painting for a poem by Oscar Wilde. Coincidentally, Wilde has a poem called The New Helen, where he describes her as, "Thou wert not born as common women are, but girt with silver splendor of the foam, didst from the depth of sapphire sea arise, and at thy coming some immortal star, bearded with flame, blazed in the eastern skies, and waked the shepherds on thine island home." This poem came out about 11 years before the painting was finished. While there is no direct connection, it shows how a poet of the time viewed Helen. And that poem would have been read by many since Wilde was well known. Just like any of the other poems mentioned, there may not be a direct connection, but they could have influenced the artist in a subconscious way, especially since the poems were made by well-known poets of the time. Even Dante, Gabriel, Rossetti was a known English poet, not just a painter. The way Helen is depicted in poems bears similarities to how Helen is portrayed in paintings. One can assume that it was the standard of beauty that everyone could accept that created all these similarities.